Alright folks, we've made it. $4,000 subscribers to this channel. I take a fair amount of heat for a lot of the videos that I upload, well, at least the ones that go semi-viral. Or, to put it in another way, any of the videos that end up becoming somewhat popular, Exhibit A down there, I end up getting a bunch of... I get flack for a lot of the things that I do, but I mean, hey, people keep subscribing, people keep watching, people keep doing all that stuff, and I keep saying I will continue to upload videos as long as people keep watching them, so keep it up and you'll get more of this crap. So, what to do? Because 4,000 is a pretty nice number. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, is it that many? No. There's something like 8 billion people on this planet. But, for a channel that I never even intended to upload videos to way back in 2010, that's not bad. So I wanted to do something special for number 4,000. Well, subscriber number 4,000 anyway. I'm well over 4,000 videos, I think. But it begs the question what to do. And originally, my thought was, just as a little bit of a sneak peek, my original thought was this. But I recorded that video a while ago, and didn't record it knowing that it was going to be used for this purpose. So I'm not going to use that video for this purpose, because it just, the way that it's recorded doesn't lend itself to this. And I don't even mention the big milestone in the video like I'm doing here. So we're going to do something else. This down here is my main computer. Call it the main computer. It's the computer I spend most of my time with, at least not when I'm not using a laptop or anything like that. But I put this together, this most recent iteration, in the summer of 2024. And believe it or not, well, you probably would believe it, but I still get people laughing at me in the comments about that build. You know, why would you buy the X3D chip if you're not gaming? Why would you pair such a high-end CPU with such a crappy motherboard? Why are you using such an old junky case? What do you need a freaking optical drive for? Etc., etc. Well, what a lot of people, I guess, glossed over in this video, we'll just have a little bit of a digression here, is that I didn't want that X3D chip in the first place. What I wanted was like a 5900X or a 5950X, because I wanted more cores. That was what I was after originally. But they weren't in stock at the time, and my hand was forced because my CPU that I had at the time, a 5700G, stopped working properly. It would have lockup problems if you let it idle. And I got tired of having to run Prime 95 on a couple of my CPU cores all the time and run the heat up and make it run at 100 degrees pretty much all the time to keep it from crashing. Yes, really. That was the solution to keep it from crashing, was to basically make it overheat. But the fact of the matter is the CPU failed, so my hand was forced. I had to replace it. The other thing is that that chip was free. I didn't pay for that. That was a birthday present. So, and that's really the whole scheme around this. I didn't pay for much. What I really paid for was the heatsink and this front panel bay right here, which had the card reader in it. And also this front panel bay, which wasn't originally for this project, but ended up going in here anyway because the front panel speaker on this didn't work. And I need those connections because I actually use them. And yes, one could make the argument that the A520 is a pretty low-end architecture, because it is. I think it's the lowest end of its class, the A520. I think it's the A520, and then the B550, and then the X570, if I remember right. That's how the AMD chipsets work. But unless you've actually used one, try not to judge, because it works just fine. I don't do overclocking, I don't do water cooling, I don't do anything extreme. In fact, really the only extreme thing I've got running is the easy overclock profile on this. And yes, AM4 is a dead-end platform. It's obsolete at this point. But have you looked at the price of DDR5 memory lately? Lately being, you know, early 2026? No thank you. I will give that a hard pass. In fact, even to put 64 gigs of RAM in this is going to cost me a fair bit of money. But anyway, I digress on that. Part of the reason for using this old case, again, it was laying around. It was free. There's no cost in me on this, other than, you know, making it work for what I had to make it work for. And that's fine, because I was going to have to get a card reader anyway. So, I mean, there's one thing, I suppose, but, you know, people keep asking me, why did I use an internal optical drive when I can just go buy an external one? Well, why am I buying an external one and having this big giant box sit on top of the computer where if I bump it, it's going to fall down and break? When I can just have the thing internal to the machine, it sits right there, it doesn't take up any extra space, I'm not wasting a USB port on it, it works just fine. So that is one of the reasons why I want this. And does it cool well? Does this case cool very well? Now, compared to a modern case with a whole bunch of RGB LED fans in the front, maybe not, but certainly cools plenty well enough. I mean, it's not cool running, necessarily. I could probably do for some better thermal compound on the CPU, but it's holding well. It's not doing too bad. So, yeah, cools just fine. People also talking about that GPU, how I need to upgrade the GPU, and they're right, I probably should upgrade the GPU. In fact, that's probably the next thing this is going to get. But above all else, this is going to get a new case. I did buy a brand new case. Even after talking about how great this case is, because it works just fine, there's nothing wrong with it, I actually have another use in mind for this case. So, I'm going to replace it with something new. Here is the new case. It is a Fractal Design Focus G computer case. I think what they actually call this is the Focus G window, because it has a side panel window, a little plexiglass side panel thing, which I don't care for. I really kind of hate that design. I wish it would go away, but I have to say that this is a darn sight better than those stupid glass, like full-on glass side covers that people think are just all the rage these days. Every time I work on one of those things, it makes me nervous. Because, number one, it makes the computer that much heavier. And number two, if you drop it, or even so much as look at it the wrong way, it's gonna shatter. And then you won't have a side panel now, will you? So, I don't have a whole lot of desk space. You see there on the side. I don't think it really says much about it. It does have some product specifications. You can go ahead and pause the video if you'd like to read them. Motherboard compatibility. I wanted a case. I'll talk about that in a minute, after you get to see all of the specs there. But I wanted a case that was a mid-tower, or at the very least could accept a full-size micro or a, well, full-size ATX motherboard. Because there is a chance that at some point in the future I may use one of those. You know, I never really could understand why people would buy a mid-tower and then shove a micro ATX motherboard in it. Well, it's future-proofing. There might come a time when you will have a full-size ATX board in there, and you might as well be prepared for it. The only place where I really don't understand why that happens is in OEM systems And I don't mean like Dell's, HP's, or anything like that, but I mean systems that are built by a computer store or even a small-time builder where they can get whatever parts they want, and once you buy it from them, their interest in the system basically ends. But I suppose, I guess, some of those come with service contracts and things like that. But at the heart of it all, you know, what happens to it in the future is not really their problem, and maybe not even necessarily their interest either. So that's not something I really understand. The other thing I did is I bought some fan splitters, because I know that my existing motherboard is not going to have very many. In fact, I think it only has one fan header. So I have some of those, and then I also went and bought from a Best Buy, of all places, a 3-pack of these Corsair RS120 fans. Look, I don't really like the idea of gamer bling aesthetic and RGB everything else, but this is what they had. So, again, all of this is what is there. I needed a case that was a standard mid-tower with external facing 5¼ inch bays. Yes, I still want those because my opinion hasn't changed on that, no matter how many stupid comments I get about it. I still want that because look at my channel for like 5 seconds and you'll see that most of what I do is work with old computers. And a lot of those don't boot from USB, so having the ability to read and write CDs is very nice. And no, an external one's not an option. I'm not wasting any of my valuable USB ports on an external drive. And I'm also not wasting a plug socket, because most of those external drives, yeah, there are some of them, I have a couple, that are just USB. I don't know where they are. I had a couple of Samsung ones. They're in the blue case. I was using one recently with a MacBook. But anyway, those exist, but I want a full-size drive, man. Anyway, I don't know. And of course, the second bay is going to have the card reader thing that's in that right now. Irrespective of all of that, the budget ran to about $100 for a case. And alternatively fans and whatever. It turns out the case used up all of that. But I had a bunch of Best Buy gift cards. I don't buy things at Best Buy, so I just bought these at Best Buy. And then the case and this fit within $100. So there's no cost to me on any of this stuff. A lot of the other mid-towers with 5¼ inch bays were like $150, $200 plus dollars, and that's just ridiculous to spend on a case. Like, unless you're building a server or something like that, which I'm not, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to do that. So I'm going to get this opened and we'll take a look at it. There it is. Still ensconced in plastic. Ah. Nice fresh case. Of course, I'm going to get zapped by this thing because static electricity and all that. Here's the book it came with. In the event of having received a faulty product. Alright, well, it's hard to imagine receiving a faulty case. I suppose the exception to that would be the plexiglass side window being broken, but I think the way these are manufactured, that's not really too much of a concern anymore. Should have saved this for the very end. That would have been the smart way of doing it. I don't know that I can really do it with one hand. There's another one on the inside of the case, as you can see here. Yeah, like I said, I should have saved that for the end, just to protect it, but who cares? Alright. See? That bit about static electricity? I'm not sure. I don't think it does. I think that this does not come with fans. But I could be wrong on that. I think the only fans it comes with are the ones in the front of the case. Yes. So there's no fans in the top there. Hello, everybody. And there's not one on the back. So it'd be nice to have all of these fans in place. Let's go ahead and take the back cover off, if I can. They've really tightened down these screws. I'll tell you what. Oh, I'm gonna have to get a screwdriver. I wonder if this one will work. I need to stop the video. Yeah, I don't know why that's on there so tight, but it is. I'm gonna have to pull off both side panels because, of course, cable management and all that. Which is one of the big reasons why I would even buy a new case. Would be for the cable management aspect. And these days you can probably find, you know, Gamer Bling aesthetic cases for almost nothing. Well, that seems a little loose. But we'll set that aside for a minute. And take a look here at the inside of this very dark case. Might have to get a light here. Alright, and there's a look inside at what we've got. 2 fans there in the front. 2 3.5-inch bays with plastic cradles, and they're toolless, which is nice. And of course your set of hardware. That one's upside down. Is that normal? Is that supposed to be like that? I kind of wonder if it's supposed to go in like this. I think it is. Well, maybe not. Maybe it is supposed to go in upside down, the way I had it. Yeah, that's a little weird. So the bottom one is upside down. Wonder if that's an airflow thing, but comes with all the hardware, probably everything you'd ever want. I know it's got standoffs, which is nice because, like I said, it'll be a brand new case, all brand new components, a whole bunch of thumb screws apparently. I don't see any standoffs in there, so I wonder how they expect you to do that. If maybe you don't use standoffs? No, you would have to, because there's a peg. There's a centering peg in here, right there, which would be used to install your motherboard. So I don't know about that. There's all these screws. I wonder if these are the motherboard mounting screws. How many are actually in there? There's 12 screws total, so probably not just for mounting the motherboard, maybe not even for mounting the motherboard at all. Oh yeah, there's definitely standoffs in there, you can see them. And there's also a little piece right there. I presume that this little piece of metal is for tightening the standoffs, but I'm not going to use that because I have actual nut drivers. And everybody's favorite, zip ties. I can use those for other things, but I will not be using them in the computer because I think zip ties in computers is a massive and completely utter sin. Alright, so let me get the other side cover off. Okay, so I believe that right here there is a place to mount your 2.5-inch hard drive. I don't know how I feel about that, because if you mount your 2.5-inch hard drive there, then what's going to happen with that is you won't be able to access it once you put a motherboard in here, or certainly once you put a power supply, maybe not so much a motherboard, but when you put a power supply in here, you're not going to be able to get to that anymore, so you'd have to take the power supply out just to get to this. So I don't know how I feel about that. I probably won't end up using that. I'll probably just use the 3.5 mounting points, because I've only got 2 drives right now, and the plan is eventually to get a motherboard that has an extra NVMe and then replace one of these with an NVMe, at which point I can probably replace one of the external drives with an internal one, and that's probably what will happen. And they're only 3-pin fans, they're not PWM controlled fans. It's a little irritating, but I don't know. So you do get an HD audio connector. They don't even give you the AC97 anymore, but I don't think people really use that. That, I believe, is for USB. Yeah, so that's your USB 2.0, and then there's a USB 3.0 on top of that. You can see here, it actually has USB 3.0 and 2.0 on it, as well as the audio, which is good, because it means I can get rid of one of those bay adapters that I'm not going to need. It does, in fact, have a hard drive LED. At least I think that's a hard drive LED. Does it have a power LED? Where's all the front panel connections on this? Yeah, it does have a power LED. I wonder if it's the same LED, and it just alternates colors. As you can see, we do have the four things here. The power LED with the separate pins, which is very nice because some motherboards still have a 3-pin and some use the 2-pin, and you never really know until you get the thing done. The hard drive LED, power, and reset. The one thing I kind of find annoying is that there's no real indicator on these wires, which is positive, which is negative. That's why they have the plus and minus on the actual connection itself. But that can be a little annoying if it's in a place where you can't really see what you're doing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put the standoffs in the case that will be used for the motherboard that I have, and the extra standoffs I'll mount in the case as well. And then I'll shut down my machine and get it ready for transfer into this new case. Okay, I went ahead and I installed all the standoffs. These are actually coarse thread screw standoffs. So the screws that you use are coarse thread. I've set aside enough. There's 7 of them that I'm going to need for the motherboard. At least 7. Well, at most 7, I guess, because it's a micro ATX board. I left the extra standoff and screw here, so that way if I get another board, or when I get a full-size ATX board, I can install it without having to wonder where all the pieces are. I don't know what all these screws are for. They're all fine-threaded thumb screws, and I'm not entirely sure what they would be used for. I suppose I could read the manual and figure it out, but my first thought was maybe the expansion card bays, but it's not going to be used for these because these already have thumb screws in them. I guess maybe if you lose one of them, or whatever. It wouldn't be for this right here. This would use screws. I mean, they are fine thread. They would be if you're putting an SSD in there, but I don't think they're for that because they give you all of these normal fine thread, and I don't think there'd be enough space between this opening and your power supply to install a full-scale thumb screw. I'm still debating whether or not I want to use this right here. I don't think I will. There's definitely plenty of cable management opportunities in this case. It's very nice. And I don't really know, the other thing I don't really know is how you would actually install the drives in these cradles. The way I think they want you to install them is with the connectors facing towards the back, because there is an opening there that you'd be able to use. I don't really like that because it means that you have to pull both side panels off the machine just to change out a drive, and the whole point of this kind of a mounting system is to be able to quickly change a drive, so I think I'm going to do it the other way around. As long as, of course, the cables will actually fit, and I think they'll fit through here just fine. So, at this point, it is time to shut down the existing system and get the parts transferred over. This is exciting stuff. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, that little metal piece that I thought was for tightening the standoffs, this one, that's actually for a case lock, which I was surprised to see was not installed on the case by default, but I guess most people don't use those, so maybe it makes sense that it's not installed on the case by default. They give you a screw for that in there as well. And then there's also this piece here. This is actually for tightening the standoffs, for using a regular screwdriver, and I had to use that with a regular screwdriver because I couldn't get enough leverage on these two down here in order to get them into the case. They just kept wanting to go in there cross-threaded, and that's no good because they wouldn't go in there all the way, and that's not going to work. Alright, time to do something I don't do very often. And that is shut the thing down. And it's off. I gotta unhook it. That's the part I'm not looking forward to because, of course, there's cables for this thing everywhere. There it is. Seems like just yesterday I built the doggone thing and I'm tearing it apart again, but you can see what I mean about wanting cable management, because I'm sure that the lack of cable management here in this area is causing some grief for this heatsink, which I think is a Cooler Master heatsink. I'm not sure. It looks like a Cooler Master logo would go right there, but anyway, I think the first thing I'm going to do with all this crap is I'm going to take the power supply out. I think that's the first course of business, is to get the power supply out of here. It is a modular power supply, so it should be easy enough to get out of here. The thing that's going to suck the most about this is that motherboard, because this particular case uses those push-in standoffs, and sometimes it can be kind of difficult to get motherboards off of those without damaging them, so hopefully I don't damage this board. I don't know what I'd do if I wrecked this computer. I think I'd be in big trouble. Alright, look at that. Empty case, almost. The next bit, I'm going to have to pull the other cover off, because I need to get the motherboard tray out of this, and I also need to get the other screw out of the side of this thing in the front that's got all this wiring on it. But that, I think, is the last thing that I really need out of this case. You can see that it only has, there's a couple of screws there in the bottom, but it only has the front panel USB, and I think if I remember right, these USB ports don't even work. So, yeah, that's why I had the other front panel bay, which, depending on what I use this for, I might actually leave it in there, because I might actually use this case to replace the one for the capture PC. I think that's what I'm going to do, is I'll use this on the capture PC. And just like that, we have returned to an empty case once again. Like I said, I'll put the media dashboard back. Well, not the media dashboard, but I'll put the one that's in here back. This one. Which actually is scratched. I'm kind of surprised by that, because I don't really abuse that, so I don't know how that happened, but I'll probably put that back just so I can have USB 3.0 on this case, because I think I'm going to use this. I think I will actually use this to replace the media, or the capture PC, and I might even do that in this video. I don't know. I really want to upgrade the hardware in that capture PC, though, because it's just running some crappy i7 2600. I'd like to change that out for another motherboard, but I don't know yet how that's going to work. But now I gotta get the old board off of this thing, and this is what I was saying about this. It has these push-on tabs, and these are great when you're installing, but they're not so great when you're removing. And I hope I can do this without damaging this board, because I don't really have the means to get another board, especially not right now, considering it is almost 8:30 on Saturday, so computer store is closed. But we'll give it a try. I haven't damaged a board yet taking it off of one of these, but it always just makes me nervous. Now it's in there. I haven't put the screws in yet. That was a real pain to get that off the old tray, because of course the one standoff that wanted to stick was this one right here. I have no idea why, because it was the one that was in there the least amount. Go figure. So hopefully this board's not damaged, but I won't be surprised if it is. Let me get the damn screws in here, and then I can start getting drives installed. Well, it's starting to look like a computer. Got the power supply in, with the fan facing the bottom for its nice cool air intake. And like I was saying, the camera would focus. Right behind that power supply is where that 2.5-inch bay would be, so I'm just not even going to use that. That just doesn't seem like a great idea. I know I'm already going to have one problem. I can't hook up all 3 fans, because this front bay thing, which is a problem in and of itself, because I had to use these stupid silver screws with it. I couldn't use the ones that came with the case, because these are actually a special screw. They're actually more like a wood screw. because they just screw straight into plastic. So, yeah, that's what you get when you buy direct from China. But anyway, the fan power on this is a 3-wire fan. So it would work with these fans individually that are in the front of the case, but it's not going to work with my extension, or sorry, the splitter, because the splitter is a 4-pin splitter. So what I'm going to probably do, I suppose what I could do is I could hook up one fan here and one fan here and cook those into the motherboard, and then assuming that those Corsair fans are 3-pin, I can hook that up, or hook this up with one of these on that extension and then hook the last. It's just not gonna, that's a stupid way of doing things, so I'm just not gonna do that. Yeah, we're not gonna do that. So there'll be a fan in the back, a fan here. I won't install any of the fans in the top, which is probably a good thing because I don't really understand the infatuation with fans in the top of a case. In fact, I can't install fans in the top of this because the optical drive covers it. So I guess that answers that question as to whether or not I'm going to do that. So buying a 3-pack of fans was kind of a waste of time, wasn't it? Oops. Well, at least I'll have the fans for another project, I suppose. Well, I've run into another problem, and this is a bit bigger of a problem, a more annoying problem. In fact, it affects one of the things that I really wanted about this case. I'm sure some of you probably saw this coming from a mile away, but ever the wishful thinker I sure didn't, but maybe I should have, because everything so far is going well, which means I've overlooked something, and hopefully this is the thing that I've overlooked. The old case had the drive cage basically right here. I think it was a little bit lower, but basically in this vicinity, so it was only required to have one SATA power line coming off of my modular power supply. Unfortunately, because the drive bay is down here on this one, I now don't have a SATA power connector for up here, and I also don't have a Molex to SATA line handy. So I'm going to have to hook this up without the optical drive for the time being, and that's very irritating. But I guess tomorrow I'll go to the computer store and pick one up. Or maybe I'll go into work on Monday and pick one up, because I'm sure that there's some of them sitting around at work. Or maybe there's not, I have no idea. I guess I'll find out. Maybe I'll be buying one anyway. But, yeah, that's very annoying, because this was going along swimmingly until I figured that out. Cable management is probably not great, but you know what? The cables are out of the way. At least they're not choking the heatsink anymore, which they were in the old case. But now I gotta really junk this up because I'm gonna have to install the video card, and I'm also gonna have to install the motherboard power for both the main board and also the CPU. Wish me luck. I did get the drives installed though. That's wonderful. Now, no light for you, I suppose. I'm not using I don't think I mentioned this, I'm not using the front panel USB ports on this case, because there are only 2 USB connections on this motherboard, one USB 3.0 and one USB 2.0. I was mildly surprised to learn that, but that is the way that this is. So, it would mean that I would only have one USB port if I were to use the front panel. Or I could have both USB ports if I don't use the card reader, but I need the card reader. So I'm using the front panel from this, which will give me my 2 front panel USB 3.0 ports, which is fine. I don't really need anything else. So that's how we're going to do that. And at some point, like I said, I'll probably get a bigger motherboard. And when I do that, well, of course, I won't be able to use those cable management slots when I do that, but when I do actually do that, I should be able to access a few more of my USB connection points, because I believe that a lot of the full-size boards have at least 2 of the 3.0s on them, maybe even more of the 2.0s as well. The other option would be to get like a USB card reader, and I suppose that's another possibility. I might even get 2 of them, just so I can use the front panel, but some of those don't have front panel connections on them. So you have to be careful what you buy. I mean, I don't even know if those are still available because I haven't seen one in forever, but I'm sure someone makes them out of China. Okay, we're all cabled up. Now, there is one thing I forgot to do, and that is to put a fan in the back of this case. So I'm going to have to do that before I do much else. But I think I can probably get that done pretty much with the backside cover on it. So I'm going to do a power test, make sure that it works. And unfortunately, this is the best I can do. I do have an HDMI connection. I don't know if it's actually any good. I hope it's good. It's probably going to that monitor right there, which I'm blocking, but you know what? Who cares? Why do I get the feeling that something is going to go wrong? Well, I guess if it goes wrong, I'll get it on video. Brief flash of light from that. Power LED. There's the beep. And it's working. Alright, awesome. Yep, I think we're doing okay. The LEDs on that are not really working all that well, but I suppose that is to be expected. What I really would probably much rather do, rather than running those off of the motherboard, is I'd run them from this thing. I think that's probably in the future plan on that. And yeah, I believe we're working. Even the hard drive LED I think is working. Yep, I think we're doing just fine. So I'm going to put the rear cover on this, I'm going to get a fan installed here in the back, and then I can hook this thing back up. Well, obviously I'll take this light out of here too. It doesn't need to stay in here. Alright, so this is the fan box. High performance cooling. Daisy chain connection. I think that's just actually for the RGB bullcrap that it comes with, but I got a beef with this box. How are you supposed to get this apart? Like, I guess it's like that. That's just weird. It's so difficult to get this apart. You should be able to do that with one hand, for crying out loud. Don't forget to view the manual, yeah, for cooling fans. I was about to say, I hope these aren't 140 because I can't use that. Well, I could, actually. I could put 140s in the top of the case, but not in the back. Alright, am I allowed to have that, please? Yes. Well, I could daisy chain these fans, as it turns out. Yeah, these are chainable. And that cable is super short. Like, that is uselessly short. What is that? My God, Corsair, what have you done? Oh, my word. Well, it's a good thing I did buy 2 of those extensions, because I think I'm going to have to use them. Unless one of these other ones has a longer cable. Are these all the same? Yeah, they're all the same. That is awful. Okay, well, lesson learned, never buying these again, because that's just bad. What are you supposed to do with that? Like... So I can't plug the RGB in, that's definitely not going to happen. Because this is the end that's supposed to go into the board. That's not going to reach a damn thing. Like, what the... Alright, well, I'll see if I can get it to work. If not, I guess it's going in there without a rear case fan for the time being. Because that's stupid. I can't believe that. That's There are no words. There really just are no words for that. Well, like I said, it's a good thing I bought 2 of those extenders, because I guess I'm using one on this. Okay, well, I gotta take back, at least partially, what I said there, because they do give you some extensions in the box for both the fan itself and also the RGB nonsense. I still think that's really stupid. I mean, all you need to do is put a friggin' twist tie on this, and it would be fine, or even make this half as long as the extension, and it would be far more useful than this. I guess most people are using these things on radiators now for their water cooling setups, so this kind of thing makes sense, but that's still really stupid. And they only give you 2 of each of these, so you don't even get enough for all of the fans if you wanted to hook them up individually. But, I don't know, I guess they just don't think there's a use case for that. I still can't believe that. Like, we have really gotten this cheap, haven't we? The fun continues with these really shitty Corsair fans. You know, I don't really swear in my videos, but my god, these are awful fans, and I would recommend you never buy them, because that sucked. I don't know if there's something wrong with this connector. It kind of looks like maybe that end pin is not the right size, just from the naked eye, but I could not get that thing to go in there for anything. I question whether or not that one's plugged in there, because it went in there kind of loosely, but it's there. It's plugged in, and then I had one hell of a time trying to get the screws to go into the case. I had to go get a bigger screwdriver. I almost went and got the drill, because that was really making me mad, but I didn't. I persevered without the use of power tools. So I'm going to put the cover on this. I'm going to set it up over in my area over there, and we're going to try it out. And hopefully I don't have to do any other work. Well, other than installing the Molex to SATA adapter that I'm going to have to put on that optical drive when I get that. And also probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up getting like an adapter, one of the Molex to fan adapters for this, and then I'll plug these front fans, instead of plugging them into the motherboard, I'll plug them into this. And then I don't know, maybe I will put a fan on the top of this case. I haven't decided yet, but I can't put 2 because obviously there's no way that it's going to fit. Unless I get a thin one, but I don't even think a thin one would actually work, because I don't think they make fans that thin. Decisions. Well, I mean, at least it leaves open the possibility of adding water cooling at some point. Well, I think most of those that are of any good quality are going to be 280 millimeter, at least. Probably more like, yeah, 280 would be a space for 2 fans. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Okay, are we ready for this? Yep, the RGB nonsense fans are working. Monitor is working. Camera's about to run out of batteries. Good for it. Very bright hard drive LED. Let me go ahead and log in here. Okay, mouse is working. I know the keyboard's working because I just used it to log in. UPS is no longer complaining. I don't know why it was complaining to start with, but it was. So things are being installed. Oh, don't open, you piece of junk. Hot deals on all this crap you don't want. Close. Let's make sure all of my drives are here. I think they're all here. Yeah, I think that's all of them. For some reason, I think something is missing, but I don't know what it would actually be. Oh, it's the optical drive. That's what's missing. That's why I don't have all of my stuff here. Because the CD-ROM isn't there just yet. I don't know how I feel about that hard drive LED. That's really annoying. Almost. But at least the RGB nonsense is subdued on this. It's not completely stupid like it is on some computers. I mean, they're just a solid color right now. It's just orange, which is really the way that I'd like it. So, there you go. There's your new case. And there's your 4,000 subscribers special video. And I'm sure people are going to find some way to complain about. You know, why would you use that case and not something that has more fans in the front, more space for fans? You could have just used an external optical drive, which is Funny, because I can't use my internal one because it's got no power. I'll have to get an adapter for that. But yeah. It's in here. It's working. So I don't know what more you really want. And the only person I really have to justify it to is me. And considering it cost me nothing, I think that's a pretty good justification. So, certainly a darn sight cheaper than buying new parts. Like I said, I would have liked, or I would like to at some point get a full ATX motherboard for this. If for no other reason than to get access to a second NVMe slot. I know that there are some micro ATX boards with 2 NVMe now. In fact, there's a lot of them out there that have 2 NVMe. And maybe that's an option. But at this particular juncture, I'd rather just go with a full ATX board because it'll give me more USB ports, in theory. So it should give me more of my... so I can use more of my USB stuff. And I think the... oh, I did forget to plug in one thing. I forgot to plug in my headphones. That's why it's saying there's no audio connected, because my headphones are unplugged. Hope that's the only thing I forgot to plug in. Let me see if I can do that real quick. I'm in the process of editing this video, and it is up over 45 minutes at this point. And I went ahead and I actually had a look at the rest of the video, of the remaining portion, and it's about 20 minutes and it's not even done yet. So I think I'm going to stop this video here and leave this video purely about the new case and this system, and the other systems are going to be in another video. I'm running Prime 95 just to do a heat test, and as you can see here, it is holding steady for the most part. Not too bad. The other thing I did is I went ahead, oops, that's the web browser. I went ahead and I added the final piece that I needed to bring back full functionality. See, there's the optical drive. I did finally get an adapter, so that works. Once again, it's not really the adapter that I wanted, but for $3, I'm not going to complain. So that's pretty much it for that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video there. Stay tuned for, I guess, part 2, I guess. I don't know if you really call it a part 2 because it's the rest of the machines. But until then, thanks for watching, thanks for 4,000 subscribers, and I will see you on the next one.